Out here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the return of the American musician, songwriter, performer Leah Andreone, who I spoke to very recently to find out more about life, love and poetry and much, much more. So, after several minutes of interesting but slightly casual chat, we get down to that exciting subject that was the early formative years. Leah, it's over to you.
So I would say I heard something in my brother's room, probably, rather than the radio.
Yes.
I had two sisters and one brother. My brother got into a bunch of punk rock, a bunch of rockabilly. My sisters were into pop and different types of music, old soul, R&B. But I really remember well hearing Liz Phair.
Right.
And Kate Bush, Hounds of Love.
Classic.
I would say Kate Bush changed me, and really enlightened me. And to this day, I'm enamored by her.
I know that Hounds of Love, because they've got the great singles on the A side, but there's the B side, which I'm all side to, which has just got some really odd and quirky tracks, which are just mind blowing. They're just so sort of interesting. There's a bit of folk, there's spoken word. It's she's thrown everything in there, but lyrically they're stunning, really. So coming to the interesting dynamics, because I'm the youngest of three, and I got an older brother who's 7 years older. So there was a big influence from him. Were you the youngest then, or were you the middle child?
I'm the youngest.
We love being the youngest. Yeah. So there was, because there's always that influence, because my brothers were, at that age where they got into prog rock. So it was, the big bands like Yes and Genesis, Wishbone Ash, all those sort of bands. So that was my kind of, my brother would forbid me to go into his room to play these records. So obviously one was tempted to go and play those records. So there you go. So did you sort of feel quite were you quite drawn to the arts and music at a very early age?
So I was drawn to the arts in a different way. Like, I feel like my answer to your last question is so boring, honestly, because my brother would be perfect to answer that question. He studies music. He knows the history. He remembers the year he, heard something. I think in my childhood, I found myself in a room often with a grand piano or a guitar or whatever instruments were laying around, but usually the piano. And I don't think I did as much listening as I did playing.
Right.
And writing, like sitting and just writing lyrics. And, I'd wait to get home from school to be in there.
Yes. Were you somebody who enjoyed poetry or writing stories at this stage? Did you keep a diary as well? Did you put all your emotions out there?
Yes, I kept many diaries and still do. And journaling. I mean,
Journaling.
I guess I'd call it more journaling for me than diary, but I walk around with 2 little pads of paper in my purse so that I can take it out and write something in the middle of the day. So I would say my process musically is kind of way more internal than external.
Yes.
And I did a lot of I tried to catch up like listening wise later.
Right.
And I'll say this, another record that changed me was 9 Inch Nails' Downward Spiral.
Right.
Are you familiar with it at all?
Yes, absolutely. Sort of that came along a bit later, didn't it?
Much later. Much later. Yeah. but yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so when you got to, because you're a little, quite a bit younger than me, when you got to sort of, I don't know, probably you were, let me do the maths. I'm very good at this. Yeah, 13. That would have been 1985. So were you still sort of just kind of working on the piano and guitar, writing lyrics, or had you started sort of discovering the world of MTV at that stage and sort of watching sort of pop videos? Had that started to come onto your radar? Though Hounds of Love, I think, was 1985 as well, actually, with Big
Uh,
Sky, wasn't it?
Yes, great question too. Um, well, I'll say this. I was singing already in studio and doing things around San Diego, really.
Hmm.
Um, I was writing commercial jingles and asked to come in and sing those commercial jingles. Um, and so I was already working by about 12.
Right.
And and that was really cool. You know, it was a really great opportunity for me. And it's what kind of it pushed me into writing full songs, not just commercial jingles, you know. Regarding MTV, it's a funny thing you ask. I took a walk with Billy Steinberg yesterday morning. He lives near me and we often take walks. He wrote Like a Virgin and True Colors,
Oh, right.
amongst a billion other great songs like, I'll Stand By You, Chrissy Hines, just amazing songs. Um, and he and I took a walk yesterday and I said, I remember when MTV brought Madonna out
Yes.
and I was waiting. I could not wait to see her sing Like a Virgin. And, I got to hear his story regarding that. But anyway, yes, I do very well remember when MTV came out, and that was a really amazing introduction into a bunch of different people's careers for me,
Well,
and
yes. Well,
opened up the possibilities.
well, I guess yeah. There was the Madonna, there was Cyndi Lauper. On this side of the play, we suddenly had people like Suzanne Vega appeared, and then Tracy Chapman, and then a woman called Michelle Shocked, who was a sort of a singer-songwriter, slightly protest singer-songwriter, which we loved. So there was a very kind of exciting kind of wave. Because to be honest, I was a very indie pop kid. I loved bands like the Smiths and the Cure and the Cult and all those kind of bands. I know there was the mainstream stuff with Duran Duran and Spandau Ballet and Sade. It was kind of, yeah, the other kind of angsty little. I was an angsty 80s,
Okay, well,
music.
The Cure was my first and second concert.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with my brother. I loved the Cult. My brother took me to both of those. Um, so I can relate a little bit. And Tracy Chapman, I'm a huge fan of, just huge. And she was on Lilith Fair with me, so she was she was a
Wow.
highlight for me.
Yes, there was that suddenly. But then there was also the hair metal bands, weren't there, that we had to digest as well, like Bon Jovi and Poison and Motley Crue, which was a little bit like, oh, that's interesting. So there was swings and roundabouts during the 80s. And it was also that Reagan period as well, which was quite an interesting, it was
Yeah,
very like, wow, everything's just gone a bit steroid. So
yeah.
but then at that time, I remember seeing Bruce Springsteen in '85 doing Born in the USA, and then sort of the week after going to Live Aid at Wembley and being quite kind of a bit blasé actually. I know I shouldn't admit that, but at the time, it was like, well, they're mostly bands I'm not that keen on, but I went along because a friend got a ticket, and then everyone go, oh, that must have been amazing. You went, yeah, it was great, but you're kind of faking it a bit.
Right, right. But are you a Springsteen fan?
Yes, well, I like Bruce, especially that early-ish period, and I really liked. And then Born in the USA was a little bit like it was on the edge, wasn't it? What does it all mean? It's a little bit sort of, the album cover, the sound, that production. There was a production in the '80s which became kind of like a bit, that Trevor Horn, the Tina Turner, Dire Straits, and Frankie Goes to Hollywood, which I found a little bit sterile. And when I listen to it now, it really feels dated. You feel like they really need to remix some of those albums. That's my
Yeah,
theory.
it's very polished. Very,
Yes.
very polished.
But then he did a couple of albums. He kind of came out with a couple of albums towards the end of that decade, I think. And it was almost like I've had enough of Bruce, which is terrible to admit, but I love Born in the USA and I love Nebraska. And I kind of, after a while, just thought, oh, and then I've picked up a few over the last few years, that you think, oh, yes, he still got it.
I really didn't listen to Bruce Springsteen, but I ended up going to Springsteen on Broadway, his
Oh, yes, yes.
and it completely turned my mind around about any preconceived, idea I may have had about him.
Yes.
It was brilliant.
I would imagine it was just, yeah, it would have been lovely.
It really was, yeah. But yes, I did not grow up listening to Springsteen, so.
I think at the time, and I'll have to be honest, when I was young, if something gets a bit too popular, you'd just think, actually, everyone likes it. Now, there's just the somehow it's not mine anymore. It's like, and people that you think, oh my God, we say, I know it sounds very terrible, so I should edit this out, but you almost don't want to have something in common with another person. You think, oh my God, we like the same music. This is not good. Something's gone wrong in
Right.
my life.
Yeah, you really want to feel like you discovered it. And
Yes, let's
I
face
get
it.
that. I do too. I understand.
And it was all a bit punchier and a bit more like, blimey, Bruce, calm down. I love Nebraska. I thought that was some great stuff on there. So when you got to 16, which was probably towards the end of the 80s, do you stay on at school at that point, or do you go to college into the sort of the 90s? What's the educational system in America at this stage? Because it was probably different to the UK.
Right. I mean, so high school goes to about 17, 18.
Yes.
And then there's college afterward for some. For me, I went to San Diego State University. From at that time, so I was about 18, I would drive back and forth and do little performances in Los Angeles, anything I could get my hands on, and drive back for a test or a class or whatever it may be. So yeah,
Yes.
normally a 4-year college experience, I would say, for anyone interested in college.
Yeah.
And eventually I moved to Los Angeles and I tried out a few different music schools. I went to something called Grove School of Music. I went for a few weeks to another school in Hollywood. And eventually I I had an understanding with my parents that if I played out 3 times a week, and that could be just singing at like a karaoke bar,
Right.
what I used to do is go to the Mint and I would stand until I could get someone's eye, and I'd ask, like Waddy Wachtel was up there all the time playing, and I would say, could I come up and sing a song?
To
That
Waddy.
Yeah, he played the Mint once a week actually back then.
Blimey, that's
I think
amazing.
it was once a week. I'm pretty positive it was once a week. So yeah, and people like Stevie Salas would play, and so if I played out like that a few times a week, my mom and dad would pay my rent. So
Wow.
yeah, and so I started doing that, and that led me to the opportunity of meeting several labels.
But
And
had you formed any bands at that stage? Had you sort of been in any, or were you sort of joining bands, or not joining, but sort of doing those kind of sessions with people on stage?
I hadn't joined any bands. I had been in one band in San Diego, with a bunch of guys who were much, much older than I. And I sang a couple of my own songs, but mostly covers.
Right. What were
And
you covering at that stage?
some Aretha Franklin,
Yes.
some Beach Boys, some Beatles, kind of whatever they wanted to play. And it was really a jam session. It was great. It was so fun. And I'm still friends with them. Still close. So
It's
yeah,
interesting because I guess at that time, I think Sheryl Crow was just about to bring out her first album as well, wasn't it? And that had
right.
some amazing songs on it. And I think because there was a band called David and David in LA, and they just did one album, and then members of that and various other community people got together, and then they got Sheryl Crow was singing, and they did that first album, which had "Leave in Las Vegas" on, which was a great song.
Right.
Is it?
Amazing. Yeah.
Um,
And
so when
when
did
I'm
you discover? When did you discover that amazing vocal? When did you sort of start to realize you had this powerful voice?
could you ask that question one more time?
Yes. When did you discover your voice? When did you discover that range of your vocal and that expressiveness that you've got when you sing? I mean, that's an amazing sort of range you have.
Well, super, super young. Like I'd say, when I started playing piano, and I was trained on classical piano, but
Right.
I'd say around 6 or 7, I really kind of just sang. It's cathartic for me. Like so I think singing kind of allowed me to vent and to emote, like probably many singers feel. It really became essential for me.
Yes, amazing. It's amazing. So you went to see The Cure for your first 2 concerts. Had you then started sort of seeing other bands at that stage around LA? Was there sort of, because in this country, I mean, obviously one of the big things that happened, there was that kind of period in the 80s where a lot of bands I liked were finishing. Then in a way, it was kind of interesting in this country because then the world of ecstasy came along, and then that kind of changed the sound. There was bands like the Happy Mondays and Stone Roses and Primal Scream, and then you had the Pixies and Throwing Muses, and then you had, you had Bleach and Nirvana, and then you had, obviously a few years later you had Nevermind. So there was this kind of interesting sort of grunge period and rock with those bands, as well as the dance scene that started to develop. And then a few years later, we had Brit pop, but you'd had hair metal and rock, hadn't you? And then it was going into things like Alice in Chains and Systems of Down. So were you quite excited by that kind of musical landscape, or were you in a different sort of different place?
No, I mean, I would say that when I first got to LA, I really wasn't going to a bunch of shows. I wish I could say I was. I wish I had
Yeah,
done it differently, but I really isolated, and I lived alone, and I wrote a lot. I wrote a lot of songs. So yeah, I can't say that I really did go to a bunch of shows. Yeah.
yes.
Collaborating, a lot of writing, a lot of playing, a lot of just kind of isolating and playing music.
So how did you then get onto the radar of a record label and various musicians at this point? Because I remember doing an interview with a few people who worked with Suzanne Vega, and she had been playing these acoustic shows in New York at very small places, and someone thought, God, we could do something with this artist. She's good. We might be able to sell 20,000 copies, and then suddenly it's like, wow, she's huge. So did you come on someone's radar when they were seeing you perform?
Yeah. So first of all, when I first moved here, I would take random jobs close to each label. So uh, I had a job in the BMG building on Sunset Boulevard, um, assisting an accountant because he was on the same floor as Zoo Records at the time. RCA was there, Arista was there, Diane Warren had an office there. And I would approach these people with cassettes at the time, my demo,
Right.
and just say, would you give it a listen? After I distributed all my recorded music, I would then move to the next place. So the next one was near A&M. It was across the street at a diner called Danny's Hollywood Diner. It's no longer there. A&M was across the street, and the executives would come over for lunch. So again, I started, distributing cassettes. Skip Miller walked in, who was the head of, at the time, what was called RCA's Black Music Group.
Right.
He came in with Angela Bibb Sanders, and they were talking about where they could go see some people sing. Like, we need to find some talent. We got to find some. I gave them a cassette, and also told them about some open mics that I would frequent.
Yes.
And they ended up coming back the next day and asking me to take some time to discuss a possible record deal. And that was based on the cassette I gave them. So that's how I got to RCA.
Right.
And so I signed with Skip Miller on a demo deal, and eventually he left. A new regime was brought in, and Dave Novick, who's English, he came out to see me perform,
Yeah.
actually at the Roosevelt, and he re-signed, or I don't know about re-signed me, but kept me. I was the artist that, luckily, I made it through the new regime change.
God, that is so tricky, isn't it? The
It was really
regime
scary.
change can be so many bands I spoke to. It's never been good.
It was really scary, yeah.
Yes, because who else was on the label at the time for RCA?
So, yeah, Steve Winwood,
Right.
Dave Matthews, um, SWV, I believe. Do you remember SWV?
No, my God, I can't even pretend here.
Yeah, I think no. I trust me, I get it. I can't even pretend. I just have to be honest. Yeah,
SWV.
I'm trying to think who else he signed. Um, well, Dave Novick later ended up signing Republica, who you might know.
Oh yes, yes,
Yeah.
that was yes, I definitely remember that. Oh,
And
so you had an American, that was an American R&B vocal group from New York, SWV.
yeah, I'm trying to think. There was it SWV, or if I looked it up, which I won't do right now, but he had I think it was SWV who was at RCA. Could be wrong. Definitely could be wrong.
No, they were on our RCA. So yeah, it's just kind of interesting during that time because I could imagine a lot of record labels were thinking, look at all these grunge bands, look at all these men in check shirts swinging, Jack Daniels on stage, like Pearl Jam, and let's get the next one of them. So it's kind of interesting, those bands weren't kind of part of that world at all, were they?
Not at all. No. No,
Yes,
no.
but you obviously captured something in them, which was just amazing. It's an incredible story. I
No,
mean, it's kind of persistent and quite. You must have had so much confidence when you look back at your younger self, thinking, "My God, did I really do those things?" Just go, "Yes, I did."
I look back and I'm often surprised that my process, my the I was very ignorant as to know. I had no idea how to get into those offices. I
Yes.
didn't have an agent. I didn't have any of that. So I am often surprised that by getting a waitressing job or by assisting, an accountant of all things, like, and just insisting that I meet, I unknowingly, I went to Diane Warren and asked her if she would write with me. She doesn't really write. She doesn't do a huge amount of collaborating, but I was 20 something, 22, and thought I'd give it a try, and, just continued to leave cassettes at her office until she one day walked into the bathroom while I was in the bathroom, and she said, "Okay, let me hear you sing, kid." I literally sang in the bathroom.
It's
I would
showbiz.
never do that now, but thank God for youth.
Yes, absolutely. Youth is it's an interesting combination, really, looking back and doing these kind of interviews because there's this kind of with everybody, as we all get older, the things change. But you look at that younger self, and some of us, and I'm not saying myself, but there's a kind of combination of kind of I suppose of a sort of arrogance
Yeah.
as well as kind of naivety, which really helps. It's like
Yeah.
you can't. But as you get older, you can't. The arrogance and the naivety have slipped, and you can't kind of get that headspace. But when bands look back at their younger self, often it's like, yeah, that person's very different to the one that they're sitting in that body now. So It just happens. It's interesting with RCA because I just noticed that who else they had on the roster was Britney Spears, Dave Matthews, Natalie Imbruglia, The
Oh,
Verve,
Natalie.
Christiane Aguilera, and the Foo Fighters. So yes, so I can see their roster was kind of in that direction, wasn't it? Yes, there you
Yeah.
go. So you kind of fitted in well. So with the songwriting, because obviously you've been doing this for a long time, was your sort of method of writing changing at that stage? Because obviously you must have been going through a lot of, different ideas, different,
Yeah.
different types of, I don't know, messages, songs, emotions in that. Were you changing quite a bit as a creative writer at this stage?
From the day I got from the initial signing to my signing with Dave Novick, I changed a lot as a writer. A lot. I really I think I became a much more honest writer. Rather fearless and unafraid to kind of touch on, very personal experiences that I'd had. And I think it's because I was exposed to so many songwriters at the time. It was, I started meeting so many people, and like I told you, I spent a lot of time alone. And, to then be exposed to this great big world, in New York and RCA and the people who came along with that. I learned a lot. Um, and the only way I really knew how to write was to kind of dive into something dramatic, big, and exposing, quite honestly. So I think that there may have been kind of an interesting juxtaposition and like merging of my pop influences and what I think maybe drew you to even listen to one song of mine, but the more indie side of me, which really is probably
Yeah, well, I think it's I realised when I was saying about my early influences, David Bowie and the glam rock, but there was also under that was the Carpenters, very much the Carpenters. I love that, and the work of Burt Bacharach and Hal David, and then people like Elton John and you mentioned the Beatles. And I liked those. I liked romantic melancholia. I realised very early age. Listen to the work of the Carpenters. I know they didn't write their material, but the songs that they performed were often really sad, depressing songs. I think, God, I must have been about 6 or 7 when I used to sing along to these really sad, heartbroken songs. I can see why later on I got into bands like Joy Division and the Smiths and the Cure, because they're all very depressing. It's all about loneliness and alienation and failed relationships. So much to look forward to in life. So I think when I heard your first album, and it was like there was the funky and the ness of a lot of the music, but the lyrics were the things which were right there. So obviously the obvious song, but there was also the ones that like you make me remember, that kind of real sense of loneliness and sort of heartbreak, and one can relate into that song and almost sing along as if one's written it as well, which is yes, what we love as fans, isn't it? So yeah, I think that's the thing that kind of touches, gets through from the performer or the artist to the listener, isn't it? Really, he says.
yeah. And I think for me, honesty, in a lyric is very, very important. When you mentioned Elton John, one of my favorite songs is "What Have I Got to Do to Make You Love Me?"
Oh yes, God, we'd love that.
Oh
What
my
I got
God.
to make you care. We love that, don't we? It's like he just whacks it in there, doesn't he? There is that one, and Yeah, sorry seems to be the hardest word. And there's another song on Goodbye Yellow Brick Road called Harmony, which is the last song on side 4, and that's amazing. But there's some Beatles songs which are very kind of a day in the life on Sergeant Pepper, which I remember being very kind of like, oh, he blew his mind out in a car, and
Wow.
those kind of, it's interesting, isn't it? Those kind of imagery things that we get when we're still very young, that seems to sort of resonate. So when you got the record deal, obviously you're sort of able to sort of write the material, but how did you start sort of then putting the music together to the lyrics? Did you start working with a musician at this stage?
Well, I often write melody and lyric together. Um, I started working with Rick Nair, who eventually made the record with me. And he's a fabulous guitar player, bass player. Um, and he and I collaborated for, I would say, about a year. And he just kind of, he was really, really, really good for me. Um, so yeah, yeah.
Yes. And did you get a band together, or were you and Rick just kind of working through what you had and sort of going through a process of what was working and what wasn't, and what was going to be a rocky song, what was going to be a bit more of a ballad type song?
So Rick and I wrote just day after day after day for a very long time. Um, and then we brought in musicians to record. I did not form a band yet. Um, once, eventually a song was leaked, is the way it was uh, explained to me. And I believe 91X or 92.5 in San Diego played it. And it then was played on Z100 in New York. And it just started climbing the charts very quickly and getting added. And it was the demo. So
Right.
our state had to get involved and say, like, let's kind of try to recut this, which we really almost did not. We may have added a couple of guitars, but it was a very quick process. Um, at that point, we put a band together, and there's I met a zillion musicians and formed a band. Yeah.
Right. And
And
is this the band you toured with as well once the album came out?
that's right. Yeah.
Blimey, that's a great band, isn't it?
I really loved my band at the time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I could imagine. Who's the lead guitarist?
John Lowry.
Oh, is he the one with the tattoos?
Yes. Yeah. He was in
Ah,
Manson. He was in Rob Zombie. He was in he played for Katie Lang.
right. Blimey. And the bass player?
Miko Watanabe.
God, that's a great band. So did you go in? So with the song, you got all the songs demoed with Rick or sort of up there. Did you sort of feel quite at that point that there was something really special that you'd written at this point?
I felt deeply connected to the record. I felt deeply connected to the songs. And I was being told from the outside that it was something very special and by people that I trusted. And we went with it. I went with it. But
And
I have
was
to be honest, I didn't think that what happened was going to happen. Like I have to say that I didn't think while we were making the record, I never thought, oh, I know this sounds crazy, but I don't even think I thought about it going to radio.
right.
Really. It was just, I was in this little cocoon writing with Rick. And again, it harkened back to what makes me comfortable, quite honestly, an instrument, myself, and a mountain range. And we kind of created something in this very isolated space. But what ended up happening was a total surprise to me, and it also wasn't my goal. I'm so glad it all happened, but that just wasn't my
Yes.
goal.
I don't think, I think for the first album, I guess everyone must think, well, you've gone from, the person just, playing sort of small little venues to hardly anybody to like, oh my God, now I've got this whole world around me, and it's just like there's no in between. It was just a rocket went straight off. Can you remember then how songs like "It's So All Right, It's Okay"? Can you remember the was that a song that came together quite quickly, or did you have to work on it quite a bit to shape it?
No, that came together quite quickly. I'm trying to think like the first moment that I think I had a bunch of lyrics journaled, and we were sitting around, and Rick and I were kind of like looking through. He saw "It's all right, it's okay" and pointed to it and said, I love that. And from that point on, it came very quickly. He picked up a guitar, I sang. We had much of the lyric there, not all of it, but that song came quickly.
Yes. And what
I,
about you? I was
I'm
going to
sorry.
say, I was going to say, and you make me remember, but you might have just been adding something else to that kind of that piece that you were talking about, the first song.
I know. I was going to say that I think a lot of the record came quite quickly, but you make me remember. I think "You Make Me Remember" must have been a little different. Again, that was something that I had started in my kind of song book of lyrics, and that song seems to hit a chord with a lot of like survivors of abuse,
Right.
and um I did have abuse in my childhood, so I'm very grateful to that, like to that song, that lyric, because I feel like I've come into contact with so many people who I in some way, shape, or form, I've connected with them. They've garnered some type of, I'm told by them, they've garnered some type of healing. And of course, I'm only honored by that. And it helps me as well. It's healing for me as well. It's just that lyric probably took me a little bit of time.
Yes. God, that's kind of something else, isn't it? Yeah, because it's such a confessional song about sort of mentioning suicide, heavy drinking, you know, you speak my name, I hear nothing. You share your dreams, I see nothing. Yes, so it's so that's quite a dark kind of place you had to go to.
Yeah, I was never suicidal. But yeah, unconscious suicide, that is a lyric. That is one of the lyrics. But yeah, it was more, to me, that line is numbing out, you know, cutting yourself off from the pain. And
Yes.
um, you know, my partner Kevin Fisher often uses, you know, the term walking scar tissue. Well, that is I think if you can compartmentalize any trauma that you or I have had and kind of set it aside, um, there's room for growth, I guess. I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place, but yeah, I kind of look at that lyric as a way of kind of cutting yourself off from the trauma in order to move forward.
Yes, I think having done some of those kind of workshop things where looking back and talking about sort of putting things in a box and then putting that box to one side, or looking at your life like a long train set and carriages and saying that there was all these other good things, but there was this one dark, and how do you remove that carriage? And yes, I suppose, there's only, to move forward, sometimes you can't keep bringing up something from the past, but at the same time, it's a balancing act, really, isn't it? These
It
things.
is. And it's different for everybody, you know.
Yes, it's very different, isn't it?
Very
God, that's yeah, that must be quite a powerful song to yes, perform actually on that front. And when sort of you'd done the album and that album cover, was that your idea, the way you were sort of positioned there and sitting?
Are you talking about thematically, lyrically?
Well, no, just that sort of such a beautiful album cover, and
Oh,
the way you're sitting there and sort of on the ground, just looking both sort of kind of innocent and slightly vulnerable. And I just wondered if that
I
was
see.
your idea, that you'd sort of thought about that as the way to project the album inside.
Yeah, that was not my idea, actually. Um, but uh yeah, I mean I'm trying to think, we had two different record album covers. They went with one, uh and I really wasn't a huge I didn't have a lot to do with the album covers on that go around. I did my second and my third album. Um,
Right,
but the first one, no, they were just these kind of photo shoots where I was so incredibly uncomfortable during the photo shoot that they would play my music and just ask me to sing along to it. And that's how they would get their shots, because that was
right,
really where I felt most comfortable was performing, singing, and um, playing. So that's really how they got those shots, I believe. Yeah.
right. That's it. And oh yeah, the other song. I mean, I think the album's amazing. The other song that I think is a stunner is "Who Are They to Say." Did that again? Was this one that was quite a quick one to write, or was that also yes, a difficult one that had a certain process?
I think I don't think it took very long to write. I think it was more probably a process producing, producing that, and um, you know, bringing in different instrumentalists and trying different things. And um, at the time we worked on ADATs.
Right, of course, yes, that time.
Um, and But yeah, no, I that song, that's interesting. We recut that with John Lowry playing. We had cut that at first, trying to think who played guitar. Um, I don't remember who originally played guitar, but John Lowry came in and played. He loved that song, and he
Yes.
ended up coming in and playing guitar. Um,
Because it's got a great beginning. I mean, I love that line, "getting smashed with God all night." And then there's a brilliant bit at the end when you say, "Who said absence makes the heart grow fonder? Who said smiling means I'm happy?" It's just a brilliant line.
oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, it's a good one, isn't it? I've sung to that many a time.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, so was that again, was that just drawn on your own feelings and experiences?
Yeah, I think that's me at maybe one of my most rebellious times, questioning uh, everything I'd been taught, everything I've been told, religion, um, right and wrong, um, formality, you know, um, and even just like I'm thinking about the line, "Who says smiling means I'm happy?"
Yes.
Um, you know, I think we often there are often facades that we put up, and it's much of the time it's the right thing to do in the moment, but at 20 something, 23, 22, it did kind of it did hit me that it's not always authentic, it's not always sincere, and you start to question things like that. um and religion, I'm still trying to get my head around. Like, I just the amount of um I'm still trying to get myself around religion. So that song pretty dealt with a lot of that. My religious background was kind of complex. We started off Catholic. We went into Christianity. We lit candles. We had a menorah in the house. We had a, we were kind of a beautifully. I love this about my mom and dad's my upbringing and what my mom and dad did. But we were exposed to everything and had a deep respect for all religions.
Oh, nice.
And I'm very, very grateful for that. But I also can't ignore, some of the problems that come from religion as well. So
Yes.
I dealt a lot with that subject matter on that record.
Yes, because that's it. Because there's that line, isn't there? You can't tell me what's right if I lose my mind. I wonder what I'll gain tonight. A lunatic. Yes. So yes, you've got into quite some interesting spaces on that, haven't you? Exploring.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That was a fun record to write.
No, it was just, a lot of your lyrics were just on that, you are on a sort of very, I suppose I often think this with a lot of artists when they get that moment where they're kind of channeling something quite pure. So what's coming out is just like, wow, that's just so powerful, 20, 30 years, God, I have to use my fingers now, don't I? 30 years later, one still singing these songs with great gusto and remember those lyrics like they're ingrained, like, yeah, amazing, really. And then the album comes out. So then you obviously think, oh, that might sell a few thousand and I'm get a bit of play. And then suddenly it's like, voila, you're right there, aren't you? Did that feel quite unreal when suddenly the kind of, I know it's a bit of a dirty word, the industry suddenly gets very excited and thinks, oh my God, we've hit it. This is like Vegas, baby. Let's rock.
Yeah, it was wild. It was, only grateful. I'm incredibly grateful. It's set me up to do what I love doing for decades now, and I'm just very lucky to still be writing songs and working. But I will say it was a bit overwhelming. And I there were plenty of nights calling home. I have one in particular in Switzerland where the I was at a festival and the crowd was singing the music with me at such a high level, and it was so amazing and so emotional, and one of the most exciting moments, but also just kind of smacks of reality, like, you're not going home anytime soon. You're gonna follow this one through, and and I did. But that was very early on, and yeah, it was shocking. It was very shocking, but just all good.
Yes. And then the sort of that kind of moment where it's like, guess what? This has been brilliant. Where's the next album? Did you then sort of have to how did you cope with that next process? Because obviously people think, brilliant, you're in the public eye, it's all going terribly well. Give us another 12 of those and we're happy. And you think, not sure. What happens to you as the person there at that stage?
Well, John Lowry and I had started writing on the road. And my music took, a much harder edge. We had a lot of fun on stage as a band, kind of taking it to a bit of a heavier place. And so, yeah, I mean, I, I guess, I mean, obviously musically things got heavier. Lyrically, probably things got a little more, controversial or, sexual in nature. And we brought in Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers to play drums. We brought in, some heavier players, and it was super fun, like super, super fun. Bob Merlette produced along with me, and I think John did some production also. And yeah, it was a different experience.
Yes. Did
Maybe,
you
yeah.
I was going to say, because yes, you mentioned Heavy Enough. There's the second track, Swallow Me. I I'm sort of just curious, and obviously, I might have got this. It keeps reminding me of the Beatles song "Come Together." Was that
Totally.
was that
Yeah.
slightly in? You know, I just can't think. You know, so I just asked.
Yeah. No,
Was that kind of something that was quite close?
inspired.
Yeah.
Inspiration. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. You've probably been asked that before, but I was just curious actually. I was like, yeah,
Definitely.
that
John
does have
was
a sort of vibe to it, doesn't it?
yeah.
Yes. So did you write most of this album kind of on the road then, knowing that there was going to be an exciting kind of like, yes, give us the follow-up. This is all good.
No, actually, I mean, I wrote some of it, especially lyrically and probably melodically at times. Um, but no, I came home and worked in the studio a lot. We were in the studio. Um, so no, I just came back to LA and huddled.
Yes. So songs like Starstruck Bastard and Porn and Pretty Freak, were these kind of feelings that you were having about what what happened to you in the last 18 months from the first album? Was this kind of you processing that?
I wouldn't say any of that was a statement on anything that had happened while I was on the road. Um, Maybe, well, you know what? I'm going to take that back about Starstruck Bastard. I'm going to take that back. But porn was kind of a statement just on just that. If you're in and out of different um cities, meeting different PDs and MDs and taking people out and record label executives, and you hear about a lot. And I just kind of went on a wild goose chase with the subject matter, um, and kind of tried to dive into maybe like the psychology of it all. And yeah, but with Starstruck Bastard, I did have a couple of situations with uh someone kind of following me around way too much and showing up everywhere. So I think, yeah, that song was me processing that for sure. So yeah, take it back.
Yes, because that period of the 90s is quite interesting because it starts with quite a nice sensitive quality with people like Kurt Cobain. And then, I don't know if you've seen it, Woodstock 99 and this kind of like heavy scene. And it's sort of, and you know, the covers of Rolling Stone magazine became much more pornographic, and
Yeah.
lad culture suddenly gets really on steroids, doesn't it? And horrendous. Were you finding that difficult as well at that stage and becoming aware that things were getting a bit tacky?
Interesting. Um, I mean, yeah, you kind of nailed something. I mean, I wasn't I don't believe I was I didn't feel offended, but I did notice it. I did notice kind of the hyper sexualization of women um and men for that matter. I mean, it's not just women. But yeah, it's very true. During that time, it was a very different time, right?
Yes, it was. It was very different. Though bizarrely, we've now entered the world of those the Andrew Tate and this kind of thing that masculinity apparently has been under threat, so it needs to reestablish itself, as if it's, and this kind of woke, people are now using the woke culture thing and as an insult. Or in my day, it was political. Oh, it's political correctness gone mad. And it's like, well, it's just like, well, you can't. Some of the things that people used to say isn't really appropriate, but then people get offended, go, oh, you can't say anything without offending someone. It's like, well, that is quite an offensive thing, so perhaps not. Yeah, it's kind of people, with this cultural war that has happened a little, well, say war, but this gig that we've had in the last few years, it's kind of got back to some of those feelings in the late 90s. But it was slightly different because I think it was like economically things were so positive. Everybody was making lots of money. There was not much to rebel against. It was almost like Woodstock '99. It was like, this is the generation we're just having too much good time. They didn't have to worry about Vietnam or high unemployment or anything to look forward. They were just having an amazing time. So let's go and get absolutely blasted and put back 2 female artists on the whole weekend and just have the lads going for it in a big way. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, it was quite a lavish time.
It was very lavish, and like every great party, it ended with a bit of a, oh dear, with a hangover, didn't it? The 60s ended badly. There was the death of Hendrix, Morrison, Joplin, there was Charles Manson, there was, the Rolling Stones at Altamont. And I think, often there is this kind of a bit of a burnout. So when you finished that album, how were you feeling at that stage, with this kind of the second album about to promote it again? Did you still have the same band with you that you'd worked with on the first album and tour?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, John and yeah. Um, I felt I was pretty excited. Really because I thought it would be really fun to go back out with those people and tour again, and we did some of that. But I would say few songs probably around, I would say there was we brought out 2 to 3 songs. Bow Down, Sunny Day, and a ballad, I believe, that it's escaping me at this moment. But and then I came home and I started writing again. So yeah, I started writing again and did not release the record that I wrote.
Right.
Right. I ended up releasing another record afterward, but I did not release the record that I wrote.
Right. So was the next one then Avalanche?
So the next released record was Avalanche, yes.
But there was an album that never sort of has seen the light of day.
That's right.
Oh, right. My God. Because I know there was another kind of wave of singer-songwriters. There was Dar Williams, Sean Colvin. There was Rosanna Cash did an amazing album called 10 Songs Undemoed or Demoed or something. I can't remember. I loved that album. Did you? Yes. I mean, there was a lot of sort of, suddenly fantastic female singer-songwriters coming through at that stage as well. And obviously, I suppose there was Alanis Morissette. Did you feel part of that movement at all, or were you sort of feeling much more of you were all isolated and us fans just thought there was this kind of scene happening?
I definitely felt a part of that movement. I mean, do you know much about Lilith Fair?
Yes. So there was people like Natalie Merchant used to play there, wasn't there? And is it Sarah McLachlan? And
Cheryl, Tracy Chapman, Sarah McLachlan, Paula Cole, who I just went to one of her, she was just honored. And I just went to that. She's great. And let's see. I mean, a lot of different amazing Emmylou Harris.
yes.
And yeah, no, I definitely.
We all loved the Indigo Girls at that stage as well, didn't
The
we?
girls, fabulous. Yeah.
Yes. So that was kind of a amazing moment. And there was Joan Osborne as well, wasn't there? Which
Joan
was
Osborne. Yeah.
so it was a
And
very rich time, wasn't it?
it was. Yeah. Yeah, that was a very exciting time. And I was surrounded by so many talented women, just, you know, just totally invigorating. Um, and then yeah, I got married. I had children. Um, and I ended up unmarried with my two children. And I continued writing, but more for TV and film,
Right.
in order to be able to stay home with my kids and raise them. And so I raised them alone until they were about 9 and 10. And they went to the studio with me 5 days out of 7. I have a studio with my partner Kevin Fisher in an area called San Pedro, and they went with me every day. Um, hence them both turning out being musicians.
Yeah.
uh, so yeah, and then Avalanche came out. That was kind of inspired by you know, my my dive into motherhood.
Right. My God, that was, yeah. So does that mean you've got a sort of an archive of material that you're still sort of wondering about processing and bringing out sometime in the future that's sitting there on various hard drives?
I do. I don't know that I don't I mean, I'm proud of it. I actually really love a lot of the songs. I'm not sure if that's what I'll bring out next. At this moment, I'm actually writing another record, and I think because it's truer to like where I am in my life, it's probably what I'll bring out next.
Fantastic.
Um, I
So
also
with
have a yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, you were just about to say something there.
I was going to say, yes, I'm writing a record right now, but I'm also working on a duet project with Peter. I'm sorry, it's called Peter and Gail, and it's with Kevin Fisher. So I've kind of been juggling a couple of different projects um, and I'm just not sure where that will bring me, but I'm
It's
hustling.
it's yes. So when you bought out Avalanche, this was on your own label at this stage.
Right.
Did you sort of feel that you wanted to be a absolute like bit like Annie DiFranco? You just wanted to take control of the music and complete direction that you were going in.
I didn't feel that I needed to take control of it, or it wasn't really a conscious decision like that. It was really just in order for me to do things the way I want to do things, I have to do this on my own. I wanted my kids were going to come first. I most wanted to be in their world, and I knew that that meant there had to be a different timeline for my shows, my recording, my a release. Um, I turned down touring opportunities, and happily, like I really wanted to be home. Uh,
Yes.
so yeah, it was more of a necessity. I want to put something out, but I want to do it my way.
Yes. And do you sort of feel as a sort of an artist, female artists, it's so much different than a male artist. When you have children, it's very different to a man having a child who can go, that's marvelous, but I'll go to work. But you go, well, I've got a baby. And so does that alter? I mean, it's probably a stupid question actually, but does that just alter everything in your sort of consciousness, and you just feel like a very different person when you've got two children and that kind of responsibility?
A good question. Yeah, I mean it changed me for the better in so many ways having children, and it gave me an arsenal of you know song ideas, and just this amazing chest of experiences. They it trump oh my god, I'm not going to say that. I mean, I'll say this: having children exceeded all of my expectations. I think back to very, very exciting moments. Like, I played the Z100, Jingle Ball at Madison Square Gardens, or, I got to go to a songwriting clinic with Burt Bacharach, teaching and lecturing. And then I think about raising my boys, and that's just my highlight. I had no idea anything could kind of take a higher place in my world.
Did it sort of ground you as a sort of a person? Did it give you that sense of being much more connected and a bit more aware of, yes, that feeling of having a unconditional love for another human being?
Oh yeah. I mean, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And um yeah, it's really what I love doing most. And I always thought writing songs was what I loved doing most. I really didn't think there was ever going to be anything that I loved more, but I was wrong. So
Yes, there you go. So with this album, Avalanche, this was you and sort of Mark Fisher together, sort of bringing this as a completed project.
yeah. So Kevin Fisher is my, like, we work together, all the time. And yes, again, we kind of huddled and isolated and just wrote and wrote and wrote. He'd come over after my kids went to bed, and we'd write into the night. And then once, the morning came, I'd show up at the studio and we'd start recording
Right.
and repeat, next night, put the babies to bed. He'd come over, we'd write. And yeah, and there's a lot of him in there. There's a lot of me in there. It's a very true collaboration.
Fantastic. So songs like Make Time for Me, Live Your
That's Dan
Life.
Wilson. Make Time for Me is Dan Wilson.
Right.
Right. I wrote that with him from Semisonic.
Blimey, that's fantastic.
Yeah. He's, as you know, like, that was a highlight also, writing with him. Just a total, high point in my career. He's amazing.
That's brilliant. And never stop trying.
Never stop.
Is that a reflection on how you were feeling at that time?
Yeah. You know, you settle down with someone, you fall in love, you don't expect it to not go well. And in my case, that kind of came crashing down. It was very sudden. And I kind of have this ever-present mantra. You keep moving forward. You keep, you fall, you get up, keep moving forward. And Kevin actually has a song, Keep Moving Forward, that I've I play constantly. But yeah. So that song was inspired by kind of the changes in my life, and just like, there's no choice but to keep going and to now reform your life. Like,
Yes. It's interesting, isn't it? Had at this stage, had you started doing some more kind of, as they say, work on oneself, looking at, I don't know, different sort of meditations, yoga practices, diet changes, spiritual sort of awakenings? Had things started to had you started exploring other parts of your consciousness at this stage to sort of, yes, develop into the next phase of your life?
oh, for sure. I mean, I don't know that it started then. I think I've kind of been a student of those types of journeys: meditation, yoga, therapy, dance, anything, kickboxing, whatever might be some form of bettering oneself, healing, growing. And
Yes.
yeah, once you have kids, right? I was in a mindful meditation class with my boys. So we were we were mining all of those wonderful, wonderful roads and journeys.
Yes. And you mentioned dance. Was there any particular form of dance that you were doing at this stage that was
No, I was at a performing arts school growing up.
right?
I love dance. I am not the most coordinated person in the world. So I did take and I did study ballet, tap, and different things like that as a young girl. But I just continue to love it. And if I'm asked to dance, I'm gonna dance.
Absolutely. No, there was I just know quite a few people myself. There's something called the Five Rhythms, but someone called Gabrielle Roth developed, and it's five different sort of types of music and dance that you go through to help, some sort of awakening or healing. The 90s was all about all the years as well. The healing process was quite it seemed to be a phase that I was in at that point quite a lot. So I was kind of curious when you mentioned dance. I just
That's
was
so interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna look that up once we get off the phone.
the five rhythms. Oh, they loved it. There was flow, stattaccato, chaos. It was all there, and probably
Uh-huh.
stillness. I can't remember. There must be another one. So
Oh, how
then
interesting.
I know I embraced it all. So then after that, what then has been the last decade or two? Have you been sort of working, growing, creating a home?
Yes. So yeah, raising my boys. I continued going to the studio, you know, 2 to 3 times a week. And I have a writing studio here at my home. Um, I have a cartoon that we've been developing. I have multiple cartoons that Kevin and I have been developing. One called The Significant Otters, and we're kind of in the throes of working on that right now. I've also started we just formed a label called June, Joon.
Hmm.
Um, it's I'm a co-founder with Lasse Andreessen, who's Norwegian. Um, it's the label's based in Stavanger, Norway, and
Okay.
Los Angeles. Yeah. Um, and we have not we it's a very new venture. We are putting on a couple of writing camps starting in the summer, and eventually, we're going to launch with with a few artists. But right now, that's kind of I'm in the throes of creating that with my partner.
God, that's fantastic. That's such a nice feeling. Must be a nice feeling to be focused on and to sort of be looking to develop.
Yeah, yeah. And I get to spend time in Stavanger, so I'll take
Yes, and going for walks on the full moon, which is always nice.
right,
It's
right.
funny because I used to, with some friends, we used to meet on a full moon and sitting around in their teepee and do drumming and sort of just kind of the sense of community was quite, and it still is, but there was a period where that sense of community was always very important to us. And yes, meeting on a moment, and the full
Oh
moon
yeah.
was always good. Was that something that's happened quite recently for you, your sort of walking group on a full moon?
No, I mean I guess that group of women, yes. But because I'm such a avid, I mean, I hike daily. That's kind of one of my favorite times to take a walk and take a hike. But yeah, with this group of women, I would say in the last year or so, it's been just yeah. Are you
Nice.
are you a hiker other
Well,
than
I'm a bit of a walk. I'm more of a walk. In this country, it's more walking, just walking. I wouldn't
yeah.
call it hiking, but I do like it. And it's something that's developed recently where I know the world of running and doing triathlons has become quite popular. And I quite like them. I do, like half marathons because they're quite a nice, easy distance. But going for walks is something that we do every day, just to go around the block here and, just to sort of get into nature and sort of, just notice, the hedgerows changing, the birds tweeting, the sort of the blossom returning, things like that. So being outdoors is incredibly important, and I quite enjoy that sense of being outside much more with age and just looking at the planets and look at the moon and just getting a bit of a sense of this amazing world, and trying to keep a sort of an idea that, it is fantastic and magical and not to get too depressed with the news.
Oh, it's so wonderful. Yeah. I mean, it's just you really do. I have to focus on nature and the positives, and there's so much to focus on that's good.
Yes,
Really,
absolutely. And I
yeah.
think just that sense of just how fortunate we are on, I remember, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but someone said if you change your expectations for appreciation, your life feels like a miracle. And I think I always thought that is quite a nice thing, really. So you just don't always set yourself up to be a bit disappointed, but just think, wow, that is just
Yeah.
amazing.
I often tell myself high hopes, low expectations. I have high hopes and low expectations. And I really like that because you continue walking around hopeful, you know?
Yes, and just feeling, and even, I don't know, I mean, seeing certain friends going through different things, to do with, aging parents and stuff, and realizing, well, actually, however grim some things can feel, I'm still able to get out of bed and walk around and get outside and do things that, one day that might not be possible. So I should just appreciate this moment and not just be a bit in a sort of funk and think, oh, it's just terrible, it's awful,
Oh,
and wish
right.
my life away. So it's kind of, I think it's kind of important to keep those kind of focus, because in a way, when it's challenging, it sort of highlights your personality, isn't it? Your life can, you can feel easy when everything's going well, but it's like, how do you react when things aren't feeling so brilliant? And then is the test of the character, I
It
think,
is.
in some
I
ways.
agree.
So, and to sort of dig down and be creative, it's quite a nice one. So, yes, creativity is everything, and that's good. So with your, you've got this project in the summer, but do you have any kind of thoughts or dreams about bringing out a new album or new material as a release in the next couple of years?
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to. So my kids went off to college and I'm here at the house with more time. And I have started writing uh, another record. And I, because, I think this is the time for me to bring something out. And I'm able to tour, I'm able to travel, I'm able to play late gigs. And, you know, I don't have a lot of constraints. And so yeah, I will be bringing something out. I'm not in a rush, but I am writing to do so.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. And do you occasionally sort of perform live at all at the moment?
Well, I not much recently, and yes, I'm looking forward to getting back out there. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that would be amazing. And if you could have whispered something to your like 16-year-old self, who may not have wanted to listen to anything, is there anything that you might have just whispered to them, even if they ignored it, to that younger person that was starting out?
Um, just go with it. Just roll with it. Uh,
Yes.
you
Just
know, just feel it. I think I'm gonna go with just feel it because I think there are things I wish I could go back and relive, feel, but there's so much angst in the earlier years, and you know, I really was so homesick from my family. I'm very close with my mom and dad, and being on the road, I was really very homesick. And I wish I could have stayed in the moment and felt everything, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a
I
great
do.
question. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I remember doing an interview with Niels Lofgren, who was that guitarist solo as well as with Bruce Springsteen. He said that, I mean, this was probably, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago. He was coming to Norwich, and he said he'd only be away for his house for 3 weeks when they ever toured because he didn't want to be any longer because he misses his family and his animals and stuff like that, and he just gets really homesick. And it was like, oh, that's kind of, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? People just, like to get back home and feel comfortable.
I do love home. I do. I love the studio. I love my, like, you see these people, this guy,
Oh,
they
wow.
they don't leave my side. I have another one down here. Uh,
Yes.
so yeah, I do love home. And I'm also ready to do a little more traveling. So I could definitely, I mean, now that home, I don't have I don't have everyone home right now. So it's like, well, what am I doing? I may as well go out and play some shows and travel around. Yeah.
Have an
So
adventure. Yes, well, there you have it. Well, look, this has been amazing. Well, thank you for your time. This has been incredible. And it's lovely to have kind of heard your story. And it's just, very grateful for that. And if you want, I can always send you the link to this, and then you can always use on any of your Facebook or social media pages that you might use. And yes, it's great. But thanks again for saying yes. And we managed to get there, which is always nice. So
I'm so happy to have done this. This was lovely. Thank you.
yeah, well, thank you, and have a lovely afternoon in the
You
blue sky. And
take care.
yes, happy spring equinox. Yeah,
Yes.
there you
All right.
go. Have a lovely walk next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
And that, dear listener, is the end of the interview. I know, I love keeping those last bits in, just for the fun of it. Anyway, a massive thank you to Leanne for giving me the time for that interview. This has been the C86 Show, David Eastaugh. If you want to contact me, you can on all those social media platform sites. Just Google away. And all these interviews have been archived on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. It's true. Have a great week. Stay safe.